authentication and authorization to access. You realize that even as a tester, when you want to test your APIs, mostly you are required to get authentication. You are required to authenticate yourself before and generate like a token, an access token, before you are able to get access into the API and even test the APIs. So they are not made public. They are restricted and they are usually within specific organizations or individual. Now, we categorizing APIs based on the architectural style. We have the REST APIs. The full meaning is the representational state transfer APIs. So it uses common types of HTTP methods. We are getting there: the get, the post, the put, and the delete to interact with resources. They usually use JSON to define their messages, and they are stateless, or let me say they are stateless and they are easy to understand. So stateless APIs, they don't keep or they don't cram any information about the client. As you are going there to make a request, you are going there to you are going there newly to make requests so that they can fetch your data. So they are not keeping your data. It is not keeping your data or cramming any information about you. So for SOAP APIs, the full meaning is the Simple Object Access Protocol. It is more complex than verbose. It uses XML to define messages and also HTTP for transfer. It is often used for enterprise applications and legacy systems. And then we have the GraphQL. It is a modern approach that allows clients to request specific data fields and is more flexible and efficient than traditional REST API. So we can just say that this GraphQL guy is the new guy and is not really commonly used. And then we have the SOAP APIs. This guy is it is old and is mostly not used. And then we have the REST APIs, guys, as the APIs that people use commonly. So what is an API call? Just like I explained, this is like a visual representation of how the client server works. So you have like the explanation that I made about you as a customer, the waiter, and the restaurant. For example, you ordered rice and chicken as a client, and you give your order to the API, who is the usher or the waiter, and then the API, who is the waiter, gives the order that you've made to the kitchen. Then the kitchen prepares your request, process it, and then when it is ready, they give it back to the waiter, and then the waiter presents your food to you. So the client sends a request, then the API gives that request to the server, and then the server processes that request and then give it back to the API, and the API gives it to the gives the response to the client. So we will be discussing about HTTP request method and status code. But before we dive into that, I would like to explain what HTTP definition is. So you must have heard about HTTPS, HTTP. Mostly maybe when you want to visit a website and then you enter your URL, you see HTTPS. So the full meaning is a hypertext transfer protocol secure. And it is primary way to securely send data from a website browser to a browser to a web browser to a website. So it's going to send your data encrypted. is going to transfer it from the web browser to the website, and back from the website back to the browser encrypted. So HTTPS, we can just say that it is a common protocol and serves as a communication standard for traffic between the browsers and the web server. So this image, it just shows the difference between the HTTP and the HTTPS. The additional S that is added to it means secure. So yeah, SSL and the CLS. So the SSL stands for the secure socket layer, and the TLS stands for the transfer layer security. So they are those security, they are the security layers that are added to HTTPS, and it encrypts the data and allows whatever you are sending to the web server to be encrypted and secured. Now, looking at this example here that we've given, you will see that we can visibly see our username, we can see the password, and we can see the account. Imagine sending this information across your web browser like this. It is prone to people can easily get your information like this. So more like it is naked, like it is not protected. Now, this is this same data encrypted in this way. So it is just you can see that it is rumbled into numbers, letters, and some symbols that you cannot even make sense of. If you are looking at this, you can never imagine that this is the same information that's, or the same data that has been encrypted. So this way, you don't know if it's a username or password or any information about the user, but then it is transferring it safely. It is transferring the data safely across. So we have the HTTPS, the HTTP request method. We have several ones, but the major ones that are usually used are the get, the post, the put, and the delete. Now, I intentionally use this diagram so that we can understand when I'm explaining this request method. So for get request method, we are fetching data from the server. So the client send a get, when a client send a get request, they are sending a get request to fetch data from the server. And when a client sends a post request, they are submitting data into the database, like more like you are creating data. You are not fetching this time around, you are creating data into the database. So for example, now when for get, let me make the example of get is when you are ordering food from a restaurant, you are fetching, you are getting food from the restaurant. Now, another example for post is when you want to log in, and then you want to provide your email and your password, right? Or let me use an example of when you want to register into a school, right? So you want to provide your name, your date of birth, your maybe certificates, or whatever information that you have. You are creating a profile for yourself in that school. So for the get requests, you want to ask the school to fetch the profile of all their students. You are getting information from that school. But for posts, you are trying to register or create another student so that they can have a profile in that school. Now, for put request is like you want to update maybe from your profile, or maybe a student's profile, you want to update their date of birth, or you want to update their age, maybe any information about the students. Then you are using the put request. So anytime you want to make an update, you want to make any updates, you are using the put request. And then delete, just as the name implies, maybe you want to delete data from the database. You are going to, you as a client, you are going to send a delete method to the server so that it can get deleted. So we have HTTP response codes. We have the 100 series, we have the 200 series, we have the 300 series, we have the 400 and the 500 series. So the 100 series, it gives more information about the maybe when you are sending a request. So when you have the 100 series, they are giving more they are informational responses, more information about the response. Then for 200 series, that means that your request was successful. You have successfully made your request. That's basically what the 200 series is for. Then 300 is for redirection. Then 400 is maybe when you have any error from your own hand as the client. Maybe you want to fetch data and then you are entering a different name, or like you are instead of entering using valid credentials, you are using an invalid credential. You are going to get, the error is from you, so you are going to get 400 status code, or any error that is coming from you is client error, so there are 400 series. Then we have the server errors too, 500 series. This error is coming from the server. Any fault from the server, you are going to see 500 series. So these are, we have lots of status codes. Some that in my years of experience, I don't think I've ever came across them, but these are the common ones. When you create a response, when you want to fetch or you want to get like data from the database, you are most likely getting 200 OK, meaning that your request was successful. And then when you want to create data, you are getting 201, meaning that okay, you have successfully created data into the database, so you are getting this response. Now you are getting 204. Sometimes when you delete, you get 204. Sometimes when you delete, why sometimes you get 200 depends on how the developer builds the API and whatever the documentation says. But sometimes you get this response too. So 400 response is maybe you are sending a bad request. Maybe in case of a post request, you missed in the body, you missed a field, or maybe syntax error. You are using JSON for your body. Maybe you have syntax error. You wanted to put you mixed a double column, or what's it called, or a comma, then you get 400. The 401 is when you are not authorized. The API is telling you that it doesn't know you. You have to introduce yourself first. So when you are not authorized, you get 401. Then 403 is for forbidden, when access is being denied. 404 is when you are getting data, when you want to get data that or when you want to get a resource that is not available, or it is not in the database, then you get 404. So 405 is for method not allowed. Maybe you are using a get request instead of post request, or you are using a post method instead of put method. So you are definitely getting a 405. So 500 of 503, they are errors from pertaining to server, just like I explained. Now, what is API testing? So API testing is basically checking the functionality, the reliability, the performance benchmark, and checking if the API maintains the security compliance. And then, so it's a process of sending requests to the API and monitoring responses to ensure it behaves as expected, just like you test your UI, just like you test the functionality of UI, you test the reliability of UI, you test the performance of your application. You can also do the same for API. So we have several types of API testing. We have the unit testing. They are usually done by developers. The backend developer build the API. So before they deploy to the staging environment, they test their APIs, which is usually the best practice, actually. So we have the functional testing. You are testing your API using maybe whatever the expected result is in the documentation to the actual result that you are actually getting. You are checking for the status code. If the status code matches the error or the response that you are getting, you are checking for error handling, you are checking for success handling. And then the example of functional testing is like maybe you want to get the data of a particular user. So when you send a request using that user ID, you are checking the response. If that's whatever you are getting from the response is valid, those credentials, if they are valid to that particular user. So it's part of functional testing. Then security testing. So it is very important because APIs, they are prone to vulnerabilities. Hackers are most likely going to penetrate into APIs. Like when they want to penetrate into an application, they go to the APIs because it is more open. They don't even need a UI to do whatever they want to do. They just need to get into the endpoints and have access to it. So as a software tester, you are definitely looking at the authentication, the authorization. You are doing role-based testing. Who can see what and what action they can perform. You are making sure that sensitive information like password is not visible, it is encrypted. So you are doing all these security checks. So sometimes you also check for SQL injection, but that is advanced and is peculiar to penetration testers. Those are the cyber security professionals. So we are also testing for another type of testing is integration testing. You are looking at various integrations within various third parties that are integrated into your APIs. For example, you are testing a fintech application. You are definitely testing. Maybe you have another another third-party integration, like for bills payments. You are testing the exchange of data. You are testing how those APIs, how the flows between them. So, and then we are testing even within the API itself without the integration to other third parties. Then performance testing, you are testing for the speed, you are testing for the scalability, you are testing for this the stability of the endpoints. You are checking for load, you are checking for the stress testing as well. Then we have the benefits of API testing, early testing. Of course, before the front-end developers consumes the API, you've already gotten the API from the back-end developer and you have started testing. So there are some bugs that you can catch early, even before they start the front-end implementation. Then we have, which brings us to the second point, which is the swift feedback. When you test application early, you are definitely giving a feedback early too. So whatever bug you found during the testing, you can give it to you can notify the backend developer, they fix it, and that way it's just easy. And then cost efficiency. There is a testing principle that says that the earlier we find bug, the better, because when bugs escape to production or later in the development phase, they become more costly to deal with. So in the case of API testing, we are able to catch any critical bug early and we save costs. And then in the security aspects, just like I explained, that APIs, they are prone to vulnerabilities, and anybody that wants to hack into your system, they are targeting your API. They are targeting your endpoint. They are looking for loopholes to just penetrate into. So once you are able to test your APIs and you are able to secure your endpoints, then you are good to go. Then easy integration. When you start testing your APIs and you've done integration testing, you know that okay, when you add additional features or when you integrate into other systems, nothing is breaking. And then it is interface independent. You can test API before front-end implementation. So you don't need the UI to test API. You just need to interact with the raw data itself. Just send your requests and then you get a response. So some of the challenges of API testing is lack of documentation. Sometimes we still have that problem of lack of documentation. They just think that you should use your intuition as a software tester to test the endpoints, and that could cause a lot of problems. Because with clear documentation, you know the expectation, you know the requirements. The initial project setup, there are different environment configuration. There's setting up of dev environments for hosting the APIs, that setting up of staging environments and the rest. And they are also trying to know how they are going to go about the data management, if it is seeded, if it is mocked, if it is going to be real data and stuff like that. Just the technical setup itself can take time. Then tool selection. Sometimes you are conversant with one tool and your company wants to want you to use another tool entirely. Then you start going to learn the tools that you are not even familiar with, and then it can slow things down. So there are some APIs that are also unstable. Then you start getting 504. So it can also, that is one of the challenges of API testing. Exception handling. Like I say, sometimes you're sending an incomplete payload. You're supposed to be getting 400. A bad request and you're getting 500. It happened to me this week. I was testing an API. And before I realized that it was the payload, there was a field that I supposed to comment out. I was getting 500. I was so confused. So the error handling, there was a problem with it. If I'd gotten maybe 400, I would have figured out that there was a problem with the request that I was sending. But I was getting 500 and I had to call out to the backend developer and said, oh, this field wasn't supposed to be there. And I raised that right there, that okay, we need to work on the error handling. Then lack of skilled tester. I mean, when you want to test API, you need to have the knowledge of how API works, and there is another learning curve on its own on API testing. So without the UI, it is tough to visualize flow. Yeah, it is. This is very true, because you are interacting with the API, you are just sending requests and getting responses, or maybe you are posting requests, right? You just want to enter the body or the payload of that API. You don't have to go through, you don't know what the flow is like. maybe when you are making payments, it's just for you to enter the payload and send that request. You don't know what visually, you don't know what the UI is like. But I would say that for a fact that when you know how the UI works, API testing actually gets more easier when you know how the UI work. But regardless, you have to test. So there are various tools to test APIs. We have the Catalan, we have the Postman, SoapUI, Rest Assured, Karate Labs. But then the common one is the Postman, and we also have Swagger, but majorly it is used for documentation by the developers. So for Postman, we can test, we can do both, we can test manually and we can automate on Postman. So we want to introduce ourselves to Postman. Just like I said, that it is an application for testing APIs. So you're able to send your requests to the web server and get your response back. And then if you want to write scripts for your automation testing, it uses JavaScript code. But for the sake of interaction, it uses JSON. So we can download our Postman if you don't have it downloaded. But I think most people should have their Postman here. But we can go to this site. So I'm using Mac actually. So you can you can choose what your device is like. But I like the web version. I don't know, maybe because it makes things easier. But for the sake of testing performance, you cannot test your APIs. You cannot do performance testing of APIs on your web. You have to download the tool itself. So you can come here to download and pick any of your device here. So when you download your API, you are seeing something like this. Your Postman, you are seeing something like this. And the first thing that you are doing is that you are creating a workspace. You are creating a workspace. You can create a workspace. Let's create a workspace, right? I'm coming. Yes, next. Okay, so let's name our workspace. TestarsQuarter. Learnathon. Okay, so let's just create it. Okay, so when you create your workspace, you are going to see this interface. Don't get overwhelmed. What you are supposed to do is just come straight to this place to create a collection. So this collection would have all your requests that you'll be sending. So collection is the one that holds the different requests they are particular to a particular they are like different requests for a particular API. So they are the same requests for an API. So you can create a collection like this and name it simple books, because that's the API that we're using. Okay, before I'm done with this, please let me send us this the link to, I'm coming, please hold on, send the link to this to the documentation. Sorry, like so that we can follow as yes. That's the documentation, so that we can follow as I continue this. So after creating workspace, we are creating a collection, and then we have our collection. In this collection, we can create a request using this button, this add button. But before that, let me quickly go through the interface so that we can just walk through this. So this is the environment. We can switch from environment. You can configure environments, the dev environment, staging environments, or like any environments at all. So you can switch between environments and their variables. And then let's create a request first. By default, the request come as a get request. So we have, when you've created a request, then you have this is where you have your endpoint. So your endpoint consists of the URL and the path. So the both of them makes up the endpoints. Now we have the params. I'll be explaining this later as we proceed. We have the authorization. We have the headers. The headers is like it gives like a metadata of your requests. We have headers for your response too. So you get the metadata of your requests and your response, and some other information like content type. You can also have your authorization too in your headers. Then body is where you have your payload in case of post requests, patch up, or yeah, sometimes delete. But most times delete, you can just use ID. But sometimes you can also have your body. This script is where you have your automation scripts, maybe when you want to do API automation testing. So let's just go through the documentation. So this is the endpoint that we are working with. This is the endpoint that we are working with, and our first, from the documentation, our first request is get request. So this API is a simple book API. We have the list of books, and then mostly what we are doing is that we are getting the list of books. We are getting the list, a single book, and then we are submitting an order. We are getting all orders, and we are updating order, and we are deleting order. So let's quickly get at this. So this is the base URL. Okay. So for get request, we have get, and then the part which is the status. So we want to get, first of all, the status of the application, if it is available, if it is ready for use. Let's just see. So, and sometimes the APIs can be case sensitive. Okay, so here now you can see that we got a 200. Okay, so that means that the request that we sent was successful and everything is good to go, like from the status code and from the message that we're getting here. So this is not doing much. We just want to get the status of this API, if it is available, and we can get going. So here, before we go, I would like to save this as a variable, so that as we are going and as we are adding requests, we don't have to copy and paste this. We can just call the variable and then we can have it. So let me add the variable to the collection as a collection variable, and then we can name it the base URL. So we have the initial value and we have the current value. So the initial value is for maybe when you want to export your Postman, and then you want the people that that you are giving your collection to, you want them to have access to this variable, then this is for you, for them. But the current variable is for you, it is private to you, and if you don't want anybody to have this, then you can keep it as a current variable. So I've added this as a base URL so that sorry. So that when I want to, can you see that? So when I want to access it now, I'm able to just use this base URL, and when I hover on it, you'll be able to see my value. I think the network is a bit slow. Yeah, so this is our value, and then I've saved it into the collection variable. So mostly we have collection variable. We can also have environmental variable, and we have the global variable. So it's in hierarchy. For collection variable, you can only access the variable inside your collection. So for example, now you want to add another collection, this variable that I just saved, you cannot use it inside another collection that I have added. And in the case of environmental variable, you can, maybe when you have staging or dev, you can only use the variables that you've added to staging environments in the staging environment, and the variables that you've added to the dev environments in the dev environments. And global, it can override any environment. You can use it globally, but don't let me bore you with all those. So this is just this collection variable. So let's add another request. We can duplicate this request to make things faster. And then we are going to this. So the next thing is that I want to get the list of books. Want to fetch the list of books using the get API, the get request. So we can rename this as get books. Get books. Let's have this base URL, and then I think just to be sure, let's copy directly from here because it can be case sensitive. Okay, now we are able to get the list of books available. Can you see we have the first thing that you notice that we have gotten 200 OK. That is the status code that we are supposed to get for a get request. And then we have gotten the list of books because that's actually what we wanted to get. So for get requests, we don't need body. Sometimes that brings us to params. So we need sometimes params. So when we say query params, you've gotten list of books, and we have different types of books. We have the fictional and non-fictional. Now, we can streamline our search, or maybe whatever we want to get based on what's the type of book that we prefer. So for query parameters, we want to be specific, we want to be direct in whatever request that we are sending. So we have this key value pairs, right? So we can type in, for this key, we can type in type, and then we type in fiction. And by the time we hit these endpoints, all the books that will be returned will be only fiction books. Taking note of this, we can see that we are still seeing non-fiction. We can see fiction. We are seeing non-fiction as well. So let's send these requests, and we are getting just fiction. So we have streamlined our search into just fiction. So if we uncheck this now, it will return both fiction and non-fiction. So query params is just for us to be specific or to streamline whatever we want to fetch from the database. So, or whatever we want to get from the server. So from the documentation, we have different types, the fiction and non-fiction. Now, if, for example, now I type in criminal or crime, definitely this is not part of what is on the documentation. The only question, the only requirement that we have is that the type of book can either be fictional or non-fictional book. So if, for example, now I decide to search for crime, we can see that we've gotten 400 bad requests. Invalid value for query parameter type must be one of fiction or non-fiction. So this is me triggering 400 bad requests. So this is an example of bad requests. This is coming from the client, from me. So, but when, let's just go back to non-fiction and see. Is there a mistake? Non-fiction. This is definitely a bug. That was a bug, because I should be able to filter with non-fictional books as well. So we can also test, like check for the limits. For example, we want to limit it to just someone raising up their hands. Okay. Let's see. Add request. Let me see. Okay. So the mistake was from my end. No wonder I was getting bad request. So now I've limits. This limit is that how many books do I want it to fetch? So I just limit it to 2, and that's why we're getting just 2 here. So if I uncheck this, if the books, oh, I think they are just 2, then the non-fictional books are just 2. Let me just go, let me change it to fictional. Fiction. Okay. So let me let me use this limit and see. So you can see that we are getting fiction books, and we are getting just two of them. So this is the use of query parameters, and is usually in get requests. So it's usually used to streamline our search or whatever we are searching for, or fetching from the server. So we want to get a single book. For here, we are getting all books, list of books. We want to get a single book. If you check well, we have seen that after the books, then we have the book ID. This book ID is unique to the particular book that we want to get. Now, this is here how we get the, let me uncheck this. This is how we get the book ID. You can see that for every book, we have an ID for every book here. So we can use any of these IDs to get a particular book. For example, now I want to get just this, the Russian. Let me add another request. Let me duplicate this and add another request. Let me quickly rename this get a book. Then we have the base URL. Then we have this. So you have seen that we already have another column and rows created for path parameters. So now that brings us to path parameters. So for path parameters now, we have seen that it is telling us here we can enter our the ID that we want to fetch. So path parameter will take us to will get us the exact book that we want to get. So for example, now I want to get the book with an ID of 1. I can easily get it here, and to bring just that book to me. So now, like, that is an example of using path variables to search, especially for a single get method. So usually use path variables. So for getting an order, if you look at this documentation, it says that it requires authentication. So just like I said, that for these two endpoints or these three endpoints that we've interacted with, we noticed that there wasn't a need for us to authenticate ourselves. But for us to create an order or to submit an order, we need authentication. And from this documentation, we have seen how we can authenticate ourselves. So we can use these endpoints. Sorry. This and okay, so this is a post request. Submit an order. Submit an order. But before that, let's authenticate ourselves. Post. Okay. So for a post request, we need to have a body authentication. Let's change this to authentication. For every post request, we need a body. So we come here to body and then we go to raw, right? It's going to change the interface for us here. Okay, so whatever we are going to enter into this place must be in JSON format. And then from the example that we have, we can copy this example and paste it here. I can use any name. This is a dummy API. I can use this name and it will go, and I'll be able to generate my token. But for a real API, you need to enter your real email. You like register properly. But then this is just for testing sake, and then let's just use this, and we should be able to let's try another email saying that email has been registered. Okay. Let's try this. Okay, so it has generated an access token for us. So this access token is like our password that we can use to send. Why is this not changing? So this is a post request. Please don't be confused. So this is like a password that we can use on any endpoints that requires authentication. So now we are going back to our collection variables to add that as well. So we have the access token. And then for now, I don't want to, because this is not what I'm supposed to get. Okay. So for this, I'm using this current value because it is my password and I want it to be for me alone. So I don't want to add it as an initial value. So I'm coming here, I've saved this authentication, and if I want to submit my order, let's get the base URL. So I want to submit my order now. So I need a body, but let's copy the endpoint for getting orders, but then I cannot get so, and then let's go back to the documentation, and then let's copy this body. So we need a body, or can also call it a payload, so that we can submit this data, the book ID, and then the customer name. So this payload consists of the book ID and the customer name. Let's send this request and see. Missing authentication. Oh, sorry. So yeah, so I've saved the authentication, but I've not added it to this space. So I'm supposed to add it here. These are several. I cannot go through this for now, but these are different types of authentication. So I'm going to pick the bearer token. I've already saved it as a variable. Let me just call the variable. You can see it there as access token, and then you can see. So I've created this order, and that is why I'm getting 201. So for a post request, I'm supposed to get 201. Please take note of that. So 201 created. I'm able to create this after submitting this body. I'm able to create it, and it was successful, and it's created a an ID for me. Now let me duplicate this endpoint. Let me duplicate this endpoint. Let me add a base URL. Let's get the orders that we just made. So we just made one order. So let's get that order that we just made. Okay, you can see that as I entered it, that's already created a path variable for me to enter my order ID. So what I'm doing is that now I'm coming here, right? Have I get an order? Let me change this name. Get an order. So I'm saving this. Please please hold on, please. Sorry about that. So I'm supposed to get an order, and I'm supposed to present the order ID from this one that I just created. So I can get my order using this ID here. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it is very important to always put this bearer token. So now this order that I just created here, I was able to get it from the server because I've used this unique identifier, which is the ID of the order ID of the one I just created. So I can decide to create another order. Let me say, in this case, let me just use Jude and then create. So I've created another book. Now let me use this order ID to get this that I've just created. Now let's take note of this. The customer name for this is John. Let me change this ID. We are going to get Jude now. You can see that we have gotten Jude here. So I'm able to get an order because I have used this order ID from this endpoint. Now let's get all our orders. Let me create another ID, another endpoint. Let's quickly do that. Duplicate an endpoint. Let's get all orders. Let's get all orders. So let's go back to our documentation. So let's get all orders. You can see that getting an order is different. The endpoint is different from getting orders, all orders. You can see it doesn't have, we don't have to enter our order ID in this case. We just have to copy it like this and paste it here. I think it is even down here. Let me just, so let's get our orders. Authentication, authorization. See, very important. Okay, so these are the orders, the two orders that I've created for John and for Jude. So we didn't need to, there wasn't a need for us to enter a query params or path params. We just called the endpoints and it fetched all the orders for us. So we can also update an endpoint. We can update an order. Now we can use, for updates, we can use either patch or puts request to make an update. In this situation, we are using a patch. We are using a patch method to, let's duplicate this, update an order. Update an order. So we are changing this to patch, and then for this we also need a body for this, and from the documentation we have, we can update the customer name. Now let me update the customer name from John to David. Now let me get, it is very important because I want to update an order. It is very important for me to put the order ID so that I can specify which of the orders I want to make an update to. So I'm going to all my orders and I want to update the one for John so that I can change the customer name to David. So let me save. Params, I want to enter the ID, right? Why do I forget this always? Okay, I think we are set. So this, as I was saying, I think I mentioned this earlier, that it depends on how the API is built. Now we are getting 204, no content, because yeah, I mean, we just made an update. We can check if it's actually updated or not. So sometimes we can, for some APIs, you might not get 204 in this case, and just another status code. So let's check the, let's get all orders. Let's get all orders. You can see that the John has changed to David. So we just made an update to John, and we have seen it, it has reflected on from our response that we just got. So the last one is the delete and order. We are using the same, I think we don't even have to, we are using the same, let's duplicate this endpoint. Yes, and let's change the method to delete, and then let's enter the authorization to bearer token. It will automatically populate this. Then let's go to the params. Now that's David that I just updated. I want to delete it. I would copy the ID and I'll come here. So I've not even, let me rename this delete and order, right? So now, for this delete, we don't need a body. We just need to enter the part variable, which is the order ID of the one that we want to delete. And in this case, I want to delete the one for David. Now let's hit the endpoints. Let's hit the endpoints and see. Okay, so we've deleted. You can see that we are getting 204, no content, because it has been deleted. In some cases, you can get 200 successful. So it also depends. Now let's get all our orders and see if this David has been removed or has been successfully deleted. So we can see that now we can only get the Jude, and we've successfully deleted the David that we had here. So I think we are done with all the requests, and this is just the basics of using a Postman to validate requests and responses. So this is just the starting point. There's still like tests using these scripts to generate tests, automation test scripts, and then you can integrate to CI/CD pipeline. But for the purpose of this webinar, we are stopping here tonight. I hope I've been able to get something out of this. But yeah. No, I'm not saying anything.